It was the year 2000, February 14th, Valentine's Day. But in a small town in North Carolina, love wasn't in the air. Fear was, because a 9-year-old girl had vanished in the middle of the night. No one saw her leave. No one heard a sound. She simply disappeared. Her name was Asha Degree. She was in the 4th grade, polite, smart, shy, the kind of child who always followed the rules. She played basketball, got good grades, loved reading. Her parents raised her in a tight-knit home with no internet, no cable television, and no outside distractions. They lived just north of Shelby on a quiet stretch of Highway 18. Life was simple, predictable, safe. But on the night of February 13th, that sense of safety would crack open. It was a Sunday. Asha had spent the day with her family. She'd gone to church that morning, then played in a basketball game that afternoon. Her team lost, a rare defeat, and Asha had been upset about it. But by evening, she seemed back to normal. She and her older brother, O'Brien, watched TV together. Around 8 p.m., they were both sent to bed. Their mother, Ikila, checked on them soon after. A heavy storm rolled in that night. Thunder echoed across the sky. Rain pelted the windows. At around 9 p.m., the power went out across the neighborhood. The Degrees lit candles. They stayed calm. By 9:30, the electricity came back. Everything seemed fine again. Sometime around 12:30 a.m., Asha's father, Harold, came home from his second job. He looked in on the kids. They were fast asleep. O'Brien on the top bunk, Asha down below. Nothing unusual, no sign that anything was wrong. At 2:30 a.m., Harold peeked in again before going to bed. Asha was still there, still sleeping, or so he thought. By 5:45 a.m., the house was still quiet. Ikea got up to start the day. She went into the kids' room to wake them for school. O'Brien stirred. But Asha's bed was empty. At first, she thought Asha might have gone to the bathroom, but the door was open. The hallway was silent. Then she noticed something chilling. The front door was unlocked. Panic set in. She checked every room, every corner. Nothing. The book bag Asha normally used for school was gone. Her sneakers, too. The family began to shout her name. They searched outside, down the street, across the yard, but there was no sign of her. She was gone. Ikila called her husband first, then 911. By 6:40 a.m., the Shelby Police Department had arrived at the home. Officers began knocking on neighbors' doors. Search teams spread out across the area. The fire department and local volunteers joined in. By 9:00 a.m., the town was looking for one missing child. The little girl, who had never once walked outside alone, had stepped into the storm sometime before dawn. No one knew why. No one knew where she went, and no one could explain what would come next, because within just a few hours, 2 eyewitnesses would come forward, both of them truck drivers, and both of them claimed to have seen her. The first call came from a man driving his truck south along Highway 18 in the early hours of the morning. It was just after 4 a.m. The road was slick with rain. Windshield wipers cut across the glass. Visibility was low. And that's when he saw something strange on the side of the road, a small figure walking alone. At first, he thought it must be a child, but it didn't make sense. It was pitch black, storming. Who would let a child walk out here in weather like this? As he drove past, he saw her more clearly, a young girl, dressed in a long-sleeved white shirt and light-colored pants. She had a backpack over her shoulder. She wasn't crying. She wasn't running. She was just walking. Purposefully, like she knew where she was going. The truck driver couldn't shake the image. Something felt wrong. He turned around, drove back to check. But when he reached the same stretch of road, the girl was gone, completely vanished. He scanned the area with his headlights. Nothing, just trees, rain, darkness. He wasn't the only one. Another truck driver came forward later that morning and described the exact same thing. A small girl walking southbound alone on the shoulder of Highway 18 near the intersection with Highway 180, 2 independent sightings. Same location, same time window, same description, and they matched Asha Degree exactly. What stunned investigators wasn't just that Asha had left the house, it was how far she'd already gotten. By the time she was spotted, she had walked nearly a mile from home. In the dark, in a storm, with no flashlight, no jacket, no adult. She was only 9 years old. Search crews began concentrating on that area. Dogs were brought in, helicopters circled overhead, volunteers combed the roadside on foot, but they found nothing. No footprints, no clothing, no dropped items. It was like the rain had washed away every trace of her. Harold and Asha Degree were devastated, confused. Their daughter had been raised to be cautious. She was terrified of dogs. She didn't even like walking across the yard at night. The thought of her walking down a highway alone in a storm was unthinkable. She had no known issues at home, no behavior problems, no depression, no internet, no secret phone. She wasn't the kind of child who would run away, and yet, that's what it looked like, at least at first. Then came the next clue. About 2 days after her disappearance, a search team found something in the woods. Roughly 600 feet from the highway, down a muddy trail past a cluster of trees, sat an old weathered shed, and inside that shed were signs that someone had been there. Candy wrappers, a green marker, a pencil, and a child's hair bow, all of them, later confirmed to be Asha's. But there was no blood, no signs of a struggle, no clothing, and no footprints leading out. If Asha had stopped there, no one knew what had happened next. It was like she had walked into the woods, ducked into the shed, and vanished. Her family refused to believe she had done this alone. Someone had to be involved. Someone had to know more. But the police had no suspects, no leads, no motive. The town was heartbroken. Asha's basketball team canceled all games. Churches held vigils. Flyers were stapled to every telephone pole. Her face was printed on milk cartons. TV stations broadcast her story across the country. But as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, no answers came. Only silence. And somewhere out there, the little girl who walked into the dark was still missing. The search for Asha Degree didn't end after a few days. It intensified. Helicopters hovered overhead. Volunteers scoured miles of woods. Bloodhounds were brought in. But the trail was already cold. Rain had swept away most of the physical traces. The scent trails ended abruptly near the shed. The earth, soaked and churned by boots, offered nothing new. Detectives went door to door. School staff were interviewed. Neighbors were questioned repeatedly. Everyone in the community wanted to help, but no one had seen anything, or at least no one was saying so. Meanwhile, the Degree family was living a nightmare. Every day, Harold and Asha answered the same impossible questions. Did Asha ever talk about running away? Had she argued with anyone? Was there anyone suspicious in her life? The answers were always the same. No, no, and no. Asha had no history of behavioral issues. She was happy, respectful, deeply bonded to her parents. She wasn't allowed to use the internet. She didn't have a cell phone. The family didn't even have cable TV. Her world was school, church, basketball, books, and home. Nothing about this made sense. Then came another strange detail. At school, Asha had recently read a children's book called The Whipping Boy, a story about a young boy who runs away from home and has an adventure. Some began to wonder if Asha, who loved books and had an active imagination, might have been influenced by it. Had she wanted to try it herself, just for a night? But her family rejected that idea completely. This wasn't a child who ran wild. She was frightened of the dark, afraid of strange animals, terrified of being alone in unfamiliar places. Even her teachers described her as shy and cautious. And then there was the shed, the candy wrappers, the pencil, the green marker, the hair bow, all hers. But why had she gone off the highway and into the woods, in pitch black rain? And how had she vanished from there without a trace? There was something else in the shed, a single, unexpected item, a photograph. It showed another young girl, someone Asha's family didn't recognize. Police released the image to the public, but no one came forward to claim it. No family, no school, no friend. To this day, the girl in the photo has never been identified, and neither has the person who may have left it there. Investigators kept digging. They searched every nearby storage unit, field, and drainage ditch. They reviewed every registered sex offender in the area. They ran down every possible tip, and they found nothing. The FBI joined the investigation. The National Center for Missing Exploited Children created age-progressed sketches. Asha's photo was added to billboards and police reports across state lines, but weeks turned into months, and Asha Degree's name slowly disappeared from the headlines. The family refused to let the world forget. They began holding an annual walk on Valentine's Day Vahon, the day she disappeared, marching from their home to a billboard with her face on it, along the same stretch of Highway 18 where she was last seen. They walked in silence, in hope, in pain. Each year they prayed for a breakthrough. Each year the road stayed quiet. But then, 18 months later, something was found. Something buried. And suddenly, the case would turn in a much darker direction. It was August 3rd, 2001, 18 months after Asha vanished. A construction crew was digging along Highway 18 in Burke County, 26 miles north of where Asha had last been seen, when a worker's shovel hit something buried in the dirt. It was a plastic trash bag, double-wrapped, tied tight. Inside that bag was a backpack, worn, small, the color faded but still recognizable, and on it, the name, Asha Degree. It was hers. Sealed inside were several of her belongings, items her parents instantly recognized, but there were also two things they didn't. One was a children's book, McElligot's Pool by Dr. Seuss, the other a New Kids on the Block t-shirt. Neither item belonged to Asha. The FBI was called in immediately. The backpack was sent to a lab. They combed it for hair, fibers, fingerprints, DNA, anything. But nothing usable was found. No blood, no human traces, just a bag, deliberately hidden, far from where anyone was looking. The implications were devastating. Someone had taken the time to bury Asha's backpack in a place no child could have reached alone. It wasn't just dropped. It wasn't abandoned. It was concealed, carefully, with intent. That meant someone knew what happened to her. Someone had touched that bag, and someone was still out there. Investigators didn't share everything publicly, but behind the scenes, the tone of the investigation shifted. This was no longer treated as a simple missing persons case. It was something else. Asha had left home voluntarily, yes, but how she ended up 26 miles away and why her possessions were buried pointed to something darker. The theory that she'd simply run away began to fade. Her family had never believed it anyway. To them, this only confirmed what they'd feared all along. Someone lured their daughter out that night. Not with force, not with violence, but with words. Someone who had planned it. Someone she trusted. Maybe they met her along the highway. Maybe they waited in a car. Maybe they even told her where to go, what to bring, what to wear. The evidence, what little there was, painted a terrible picture. Whatever happened after Asha stepped out into the dark, she hadn't been alone for long. The search for her didn't stop, not in 2001, not in the years after. The FBI kept the case open. The reward for information climbed. Posters were reprinted, the billboard stayed lit, and the family never gave up. But as time went on, it grew harder to hold on to hope. Each day that passed without an answer was another reminder that whoever took Asha Degree was still out there, watching, waiting, silent. In the early hours of February 14th, 2000, as Asha Degree walked alone along Highway 18, two drivers saw her. Both men came forward during the initial investigation. Both described the same thing, a small figure, walking southbound on the shoulder of the highway. Around 4:08 a.m., the rain had eased to a drizzle. The girl was alone, wearing light clothing. She wasn't waving. She wasn't running. She was walking calmly, with purpose, head down, focused. One of the drivers, a local motorist, circled back, concerned. He turned his car around, planning to offer help. But when he reached the spot again, Asha was gone. He pulled over, stepped out, and searched the roadside. There was nothing, just the wind, the trees, and the sound of rain dripping through pine needles. It was as if she had vanished into the forest. That was one of the last confirmed sightings of Asha Degree. But years later, in 2004, a new witness came forward, someone who claimed they had seen Asha that morning too. The man said he had been driving along Highway 18 just past where the original sightings were made. He remembered a green early 70s model car, possibly a Lincoln Continental or Ford Thunderbird, parked along the roadside, large, distinctive, with rust on the wheels, and beside it, a young girl. She was getting into the vehicle. Investigators took the tips seriously. The timeline fit, the location made sense, and most importantly, it was new. This lead opened up a terrifying possibility. What if Asha didn't just vanish into the woods? What if someone picked her up, voluntarily, quietly, without a struggle? Asha's parents were horrified. They had always feared this, that someone had coaxed her out, manipulated her, lured her into believing they were safe. A predator who knew how to talk to children. Someone who had watched her, planned carefully, and waited for the right moment. There was another detail that troubled investigators. In the days leading up to her disappearance, Asha had been seen gathering things in secret, stuffing small items into her backpack. Her parents didn't notice, but one of her cousins remembered it later. Tiny things, trinkets, a comb, a barrette, a notebook, like she was preparing. But preparing for what? Where did she think she was going, and who told her to? For years, that green car became a symbol of suspicion. Flyers were updated, witness sketches were made, but no owner was ever identified. No license plate found, no confirmation. Just one more ghost in the case. One more question with no answer. The FBI re-interviewed everyone from Asha's school, her basketball team, her neighborhood, but nothing concrete surfaced. There were no adults in her life who stood out, no digital trail, no evidence of abuse, no signs of grooming. If someone had gotten to her, they had done it quietly, and they had done it well. By 2010, a full decade after Asha disappeared, the case was still open, but cold. Every February, the Degree family still marched, still held out hope, still stood in front of cameras and begged the public not to forget her. And every year, the same question echoed louder. Why did a 9-year-old girl walk into the storm, and how did she disappear, without a single scream, without a single witness, into the dark? In February 2015, 15 years after Asha vanished, the FBI, the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office, and the SBI officially reopened the case. They began reviewing every piece of evidence from the beginning, re-interviewing old witnesses, checking timelines, retesting anything that could still hold DNA. That same year, a tip came in. It was anonymous, unconfirmed, but strange. The caller said Asha may have been spotted at a house in North Shelby, not far from where she was last seen, back in 2000. According to the tip, Asha was alive for a short time after her disappearance and had been at that house. Investigators didn't disclose many details publicly, but whatever the caller said, it was specific enough that the authorities took it seriously. They began digging into old records. They pulled property listings from 2000, ownership documents, rental agreements. The area was searched again, quietly, discreetly, but no arrest followed, no one was named. Whoever made that call, they never called back, and the trail went cold again. In 2016, the FBI released 2 age-progressed images of what Asha might look like at 26 years old. They reissued reward flyers, and they quietly looked into the 2 most baffling objects found in her buried backpack, the Dr. Seuss book and the New Kids on the Block shirt, items her family swore she never owned. The book, McElligot's Pool, had been borrowed from Asha's school library, but not by her. That discovery raised a bowling possibility. What if the person who lured Asha out had taken the book? What if it was a bait? Asha loved reading. She was quiet, imaginative, thoughtful. She didn't talk to strangers. So what if the person who took her wasn't a stranger? What if it was someone she knew from school? Someone she trusted? A neighbor, a coach, a volunteer, or someone who knew how to make it look that way? The new kids on the block shirt added another layer of confusion. No one could trace where it came from. Not from the house, not from her extended family, not from her school. Like the book, it was planted, a ghost object, something that suggested one thing and proved nothing. Each of these clues seemed to point to a larger truth, that someone had been preparing, that Asha's disappearance wasn't spontaneous, it was planned. Every breadcrumb, the backpack, the burial site, the shirt, suggested orchestration, but by whom and why? 15 years later, Asha's parents still believed she was alive. They believed it because there was no proof she wasn't, no remains, no final clue, just silence. That kind of absence can drive a family to madness or to hope. The Degree family chose hope. They refused to believe she was gone. And they weren't alone. Over the years, strangers from across the country joined the search. Online sleuths, podcast listeners, retired detectives, all drawn to the haunting mystery of a child who vanished not with a scream, but with a whisper. One moment she was home, safe in her bed. The next, she was a silhouette on the side of a highway, walking calmly into the dark. The image haunted everyone who heard it. Even seasoned investigators said they'd never worked a case quite like Asha's, because it wasn't just a missing person. It was a riddle wrapped in silence, and every time it felt like they were close to an answer, the trail disappeared. It's been over 2 decades since Asha Degree stepped out into the storm. She would be in her early 30s now. Maybe married, maybe a mother herself, maybe living quietly somewhere, not knowing the world still searches for her, or maybe she's still waiting to be found. Her parents, Harold and Akila Degree, never stopped believing. They still live in the same house. Asha's room remains untouched, her toys still on the shelf, her school photos framed on the wall, frozen in time. Every Valentine's Day, the family hosts a walk in her memory. They call it Asha's Walk. Hundreds gather, wearing shirts with her face on them, marching through the town. The community still comes. Strangers still show up. The town of Shelby remembers. They walk not just for Asha, but for the truth. Because this case was never about just one girl. It's about a system that couldn't explain how a child could vanish from her own neighborhood without a single trace. It's about questions no one could answer. What would make a quiet, rule-following 9-year-old sneak out in the middle of the night? Why did she pack school supplies and candy? How did she end up on the side of a highway, in the rain, at 4 a.m? Who was the driver of that green car? And why were her belongings buried 30 miles away, in a spot no one would find for over a year? There are theories, many of them. Some believe Asha ran away because of pressure. A recent basketball game she fouled out of had upset her, but her parents say that doesn't fit Others. Others think she was groomed, that someone she knew convinced her to meet them secretly, promised her something, lied to her. And some believe the answer lies in that backpack, in the objects that didn't belong to her, in the book she didn't borrow, in the shirt no one could explain. That someone planted them, that someone planned it. Asha's mother once said, "If I had the chance to ask God one question, it would be, what happened to my baby?" And it's that quiet heartbreak, the ache of not knowing, that defines this case. In 2020, the FBI and local authorities increased the reward to $45,000. They reminded the public, we believe someone knows something. They still urge anyone with information, even a rumor, even a memory, to come forward. Because Asha's story isn't over. Not yet. And somewhere out there, in a locked box or a buried memory, the truth still lives. Maybe one day, someone will break their silence. Maybe one day, the phone will ring, and the Degree family will finally hear the words they've been waiting decades to hear. Until then, the porch light at the Degree house stays on every night for Asha.